Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'm looking at Escape from Stalingrad Z, a 1 to 2 player campaign zombie survival game. And disclaimer that I was sent a review copy of this one. I'm a bit of a sucker for a zombie theme, especially when it's tied into the World War II setting. How does this one work for solo and cooperative play? Let's find out and get to the list. So for my number 5 point, I'm focusing on the campaign in the game and the narrative, and for me this is generally a pro. There isn't a ton of narrative in the game. You get a nice little intro, but then the individual missions tend to have just like a little quick paragraph or even just a few sentences, which if you're looking for more might not be enough for some people, but I think it's enough to kind of get you in the mood of each mission while keeping things moving. I also appreciate that there's a lot of branching and choices in the missions, so this does give the campaign some replayability. Yes, you're going to hit some of these major kind of milestone set piece battles every time you play, but there's a lot to kind of discover and try out. And kind of going along the same line, there are these entries, sort of these like secrets you can discover based on things you do and where you go. So the game does give a lot of ways to kind of try again with different characters, have different things happen. Campaign works well overall. But my number 4 point goes down to a mix for my taste, and that's related to the campaign. It's the individual scenario design. So first, on a positive side, I love map books. It's like my favorite thing. I want every adventure and crawler game to have them, and this one works well. You've got all the pertinent rules information over here, the maps over here. But in a very cool touch for certain major scenarios, you actually have a double-size map with a lot more stuff going on. And without any major spoilers, the scenario design is well done here. There are scenarios where you're trying to rescue people, where it's more of a race to do something with like little special rules and things. It doesn't get too complicated, but it does keep things interesting. However, on the negative side, you do tend to get into a bit of a rut of move from one place to another while trying to scavenge as much as you can. That tends to be sort of the average thing you do in each scenario. And then the thing that I'll discuss more in a moment, also a bit of a negative for the scenario design for me, is that you have a bunch of scenarios where you'll be holding up while you rest and recover, or where you'll be scavenging for resources. And while the maps for these do change a bit, it tends to be the same thing each time, and you're replaying the same scenario multiple times, so that can get a little bit dull. And that gets into my number 3, which is my only full-on con for the game, and that is the potential for grinding. So there are lots of things that are core to the design that encourage a lot of repetition and kind of doing the same thing. First of all, each of the characters has skills that you gain by leveling up, and you get experience for killing zombies. So in what I find to be a somewhat unthematic thing when you're trying to like escape and run away, often in scenarios when you're not in any danger, you'll just kind of sit there and kill zombies for an extended period of time until the round marker resets. And then similarly, once you get past the tutorial, you'll start building up fatigue, and you get it basically every scenario. And the only way to get rid of it is to use food, but you can't get enough food, and fatigue builds up even if you do eat food. So you have to play the scavenge and hole-up scenarios I mentioned previously. And it really feels like sort of in a video game-ish sensibility that they're extending and ballooning the runtime of the game. Like instead of playing, through the 20 or 25 scenarios to beat the entire campaign, you're adding on like another 20 scenarios that are kind of the same thing each time to just keep your fatigue down. Now, it should be easy to house rule. The one I've thought about is making food get rid of all the fatigue instead of you always gaining a little bit each time, so that you only need to play those extra scenarios maybe like 3 or 4 times in an entire campaign, which seems more doable to me, but that's going to depend on your taste. But yeah, the grind is annoying to me personally. Now, what might annoy a lot more people is the randomness in the game, and this can be huge. A bad roll can mean you don't kill the zombie right in your face. A good roll can mean you do. A bad roll on initiative can mean that all the zombies get to bite you before you get to run away. A bad roll in a scavenging mission can mean that you get nothing for your entire turn. A good roll can give you like the exact stuff you need to survive or to kill the zombies. Now, this is a mix because sometimes the randomness can be frustrating, but also it is one of the things that gives the game more life, gives it more replay, gives it more variety in how things play out. So this is going to depend a lot on your taste, but just be aware that randomness does rear its head quite often and might be frustrating for some players. But I am going to end with a full pro for my taste with the action system and kind of how you do stuff in the game. I think it works really well. Each of your characters gets a certain number of movement points. It doesn't take long to kind of memorize how much each thing costs. You can attack at some point during your movement. If you run, you can move farther, but you are worse at attacking. If you stay still, you aren't making any progress, but you have a much better chance to hit. And the zombies move in a very predictable simple, very easy to resolve way. It doesn't take very long, even when you have like 20 of them on the board. So I like all of this, sort of the tactical puzzle of playing, very streamlined and straightforward. And it's even more fun once you have a second character in there, which happens pretty quickly. Lets you do two-player co-op, lets you gang up on zombies, like have one person stun them and the other person take advantage of it to get a headshot while they're weakened, which does mitigate the randomness I talked about. So yeah, overall, the actual like movement puzzle, getting your people around, trying to thread the needle of tons of zombies around you, take the shots only when you really want to. I think it works great as a simple, straightforward, but also very tense movement and action puzzle. So overall, you might want to check out Escape from Stalingrad Z if you're into light war games or light tactical combat games in general, or if you like survival games, I think this could also be up your alley. And especially if you like games that mix good tension with a minor narrative element, but not a ton of reading. On the other hand, you might want to avoid this one if you are randomness averse. Sometimes some bad die rolls can really ruin your day. And also, unless you're willing to house rule it out, like I think I might do, you might want to avoid this one if you don't like grinding and repetition in the game, because there is the possibility for a lot of that with the fatigue mechanic. And if you want to see the game in action, I did a double playthrough recently. You can see 2 different scenarios. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good gaming, and I'll see you at the next stop.